The conference room was dead silent. Rows of employees sat stiffly, waiting for the CEO's verdict on yet another failed quarter. He was known as ruthless, sharp words, harsher decisions. Nobody breathed wrong when he was around. But just as he prepared to speak, a small voice broke through the tension. "Excuse me, sir, can you read this for me? It's important." Everyone turned in disbelief. At the doorway stood a little girl, no more than 9, her eyes wide but steady, clutching a worn leather diary against her chest. She had slipped past security, and yet something in her presence froze the entire room. The CEO, Mr. Jonathan Hale, stared at her with irritation at first. "Who let this child in here?" he barked, but then he saw the trembling hands holding the diary. He saw the tears barely contained in her eyes. And against every instinct he had honed over decades of power and control, he found himself saying softly, "Come here." The CEO who had forgotten how to feel. Jonathan Hale had built his empire from nothing. Or at least, that's what the world believed. In truth, he had built it by shutting every door to his past. Raised in poverty by a single mother who had worked herself to the bone, Jonathan had vowed never to be powerless again. But in his rise, he had buried compassion under profit margins, humanity under ambition. Employees described him as cold, efficient, untouchable. He liked it that way. He had no time for weakness, no time for distractions. His life was meetings, deals, and numbers. He rarely thought about family, not since his mother passed away years ago, a chapter he never revisited. And now here was a little girl interrupting his empire. The girl in the diary. The girl walked forward slowly, her shoes scuffing the marble floor. "My name is Emma," she whispered. "This is my mother's diary. She wanted me to give it to you. She said you'd understand." The room buzzed with confusion. Jonathan frowned. "Your mother, who is she?" Emma looked down at the diary, then back up at him. She used to work for you. Before she got sick." Jonathan blinked, trying to recall. Thousands of employees had come and gone under his leadership. He had no time to remember names. Emma pressed the diary toward him. "Please, I can't read all the words. But she said you should." Something in her tone, pleading, hopeful, desperate, made it impossible to refuse. Jonathan took the diary, its cover cracked from years of use. He opened it to the first page. His chest tightened. The handwriting was neat but worn. And at the top, in looping letters, was a name he hadn't seen in over a decade. Diary of Grace Turner. Jonathan remembered then. Grace. She had been a quiet but diligent secretary during his earlier years. She had never stood out, never pushed for recognition. But he remembered her smile, gentle and patient. He remembered how she used to leave the office exactly at 5 to pick up her daughter. Her daughter, Emma. A mother's words. Jonathan cleared his throat and began to read aloud. His voice, usually sharp and commanding, now trembled. "Today was hard. The treatments make me so tired, but I smiled through work. For Emma. Always for Emma. I worry about her future if I'm not here. She deserves more than I can give. Maybe one day, someone will see her worth." Jonathan faltered. He looked at the little girl sitting across from him now, her eyes fixed on him, trusting him to continue. Page after page, Grace's voice came alive. She wrote of her struggles as a single mother, her fight against illness she kept hidden from colleagues, her pride in every small milestone Emma reached. She wrote about Jonathan too, though never with bitterness. "Mr. Hale doesn't notice me, but I notice him. He is always alone. I wonder if anyone writes about him. If anyone cares. I hope he remembers that people matter more than profits. One day, maybe he'll see." The words hit Jonathan like blows. For the first time in years, he felt his carefully built walls crack. He remembered Grace's quiet presence, the way she had never complained even while clearly exhausted. And he remembered the day she stopped coming to work. He hadn't asked why. He hadn't cared. Until now. The challenge of facing himself. Jonathan closed the diary slowly. The boardroom was silent, every executive stunned by the transformation unfolding before them. Emma's small voice broke through again. "She wanted me to give this to you. She said maybe you'd help me, because she couldn't anymore." Jonathan's throat tightened. "What do you need, Emma?" Emma bit her lip. "Just a chance. She said you know how it feels to have nothing. She said you'd understand. The weight of her words crushed him. She was right, he did know. But he had spent years pretending he didn't. For days afterward, Jonathan couldn't escape the diary's words. He read every page late at night in his penthouse, the city skyline glowing around him. Grace's entries weren't just about hardship, they were filled with hope, faith, love for her daughter, and quiet reminders of humanity he had long abandoned. He faced his first challenge, admitting to himself that he had become the very man his mother once warned him against, powerful, yes, but empty. The challenge of change. Jonathan decided to act, but change was never easy. When he announced at the next meeting that the company would be launching a scholarship program for children of employees, board members balked. This is sentimentality, not strategy, one argued. Jonathan stood firm. It's both. Our people are our strategy. Without them, we are nothing. Resistance grew. Investors feared reduced profits. Executives whispered about their once heartless leader losing his edge. But Jonathan didn't waver. He thought of Grace, of Emma, and of his own mother who had sacrificed everything for him. He invested company funds not just into scholarships, but also into health support programs for employees, something Grace would have benefited from had it existed years earlier. This was his second challenge, standing against a system he himself had built, choosing humanity over cold numbers. A new bond. Meanwhile, Jonathan kept seeing Emma. At first, it was awkward. He didn't know how to talk to children. But Emma had her mother's warmth, and slowly, she thawed his stiffness. She told him about her school, her dreams of becoming a teacher, her struggles with losing her mom. One day, she asked him quietly, "Do you miss your mom too?" The question pierced him. He had avoided thinking about his own mother for so long. But in Emma's eyes, he saw the reflection of his younger self, the boy who had been poor, lonely, but fiercely loved. "Yes," he admitted softly. "I miss her every day." Together, they read Grace's diary again, this time as a bond between them, not just words on paper. Jonathan realized he had been given a second chance, not to erase his mistakes, but to honor the people who had shaped him. The resolution. Months passed, and the company changed. Employees who once feared Jonathan began to see him differently. He walked the halls, spoke with staff, listened instead of commanding. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. Emma received the first scholarship from the new program. On the day of the award ceremony, she stood on stage, small but confident, clutching her mother's diary. She looked up at Jonathan and smiled. "This is for you, Mom," she whispered into the microphone. "And thank you, Mr. Hale, for reading her words." Tears blurred Jonathan's vision, but he didn't hide them. For the first time, he allowed the world to see him not as an untouchable CEO, but as a man capable of change. The final message. That night, alone in his office, Jonathan wrote a new entry in Grace's diary, on the very last blank page. "Grace, I failed to see you when you were here. But I see you now. Your words reminded me of who I was meant to be. Because of you, I will not waste the years I have left. I promise Emma will never feel alone. And I promise to lead with the compassion you lived by every day." He closed the diary and placed it back in Emma's hands the next morning. "This belongs to you," he told her. "But know that it changed me forever." Emma hugged it close, smiling through tears. "Then Mom did what she wanted. She helped you remember." Jonathan nodded, his voice firm but gentle. "Yes, and because of her, and because of you, I'll never forget again."